The cargo ship came out of the darkness between stars like a tired bird returning to its nest. It was not a beautiful ship. The paint was old and scratched. The engine made sounds that worried anyone who heard them. The name on the side read the Persimmon in faded letters, but when it appeared on the station's sensors, something strange happened on the dock. Three young stopped playing their game. Their ears went up. Their tails began to move back and forth. They were a proud species. They stood tall on two legs, covered in thick fur that ranged from to black. Their faces were long, filled with sharp teeth. Their eyes were golden and fierce. They had ruled this sector of space for 1,000 years. They called themselves hunters. They called most other species prey. But these three young ones, these cubs, were not acting like hunters now. They were acting like excited puppies. "She is here," shouted the smallest one, a female cub named. Her fur was silver-white, rare among her kind. She grabbed her brother's arm. "Look, the human is here." Was quieter than his sister. He had dark fur and serious eyes, but even he could not hide the happiness on his face. "I see it," he said. "Bora, come quickly." Bora was the eldest of the three. She was almost old enough to begin hunter training. Her fur was black like night, and she carried herself with the pride expected of her species. But when she saw the ship landing, she forgot about pride. She ran. The adult on the dock stopped what they were doing. They watched the three cubs run toward the landing pad. This was wrong. Cubs did not run toward alien ships. Cubs did not show excitement for outsiders. It was shameful. An old hunter named watched with hard eyes. He was tall even for and his fur had turned with age. Scars covered his arms and face. He had killed many enemies in his life. He feared nothing in the galaxy. But watching these cubs run toward a human ship made him feel something he did not like, something cold in his stomach. The ship landed with a loud hiss of steam. The ramp lowered slowly, metal scraping against metal, and then she appeared. The human woman was small. To eyes, she looked like a child, though the adults knew she was fully grown. Her skin was a warm brown color. Her hair was black and cut short. She wore a simple jacket and work pants, both covered in old stains. She looked tired. She looked like she had not slept well in many days. But when she saw the cubs running toward her, she smiled. It was a wide smile that showed her flat, harmless teeth. Her dark eyes became warm and soft. "My little wolves," she called out. Her voice was not strong, but it carried across the dock. "Did you miss me?" The cubs reached her at the same time, grabbed her leg, stopped in front of her, trying to look calm but failing. Bora stood tall, but her tail was moving so fast it was almost a blur. Shouted, "You are late. You said 15 days, but it has been 18. The human woman laughed and kneeled down. She was now at eye level with the youngest cub. "I know, little one, I am sorry. There was a storm in the passage. I had to go around." She reached into her jacket and pulled out 3 small packages wrapped in colorful paper. The cub's eyes went wide. "What is it?" asked. He was trying very hard to sound like he did not care, but his voice cracked. "Something from Earth," said. "Sweet rice cakes. I made them myself before I left. Well, the ship's food printer made them, but I pushed the buttons." The cubs took the packages like they were made of gold. They tore open the paper and found small, soft cakes inside. The cakes were white and pink and green. They smelled sweet and strange. Shoved one into her mouth immediately. Her eyes went very wide. "It is so soft," she said with her mouth full. "And sweet, try it." Even Bora, who was trying to act mature, could not resist. She bit into a pink cake and made a small sound of happiness that she would later deny ever making. Watched them eat with that same warm smile on her face. She reached out and rubbed the fur on his head, just between her ears. The cub leaned into her touch like a pet being scratched. "You are strange, human." The voice was deep and cold. Looked up to see standing over her. His shadow blocked out the station's lights. His golden eyes were not friendly. Stood up slowly. She was so short that she barely reached the old hunter's chest, but she did not look away from his eyes. "I am just a trader," she said simply. "I bring goods to the station. I visit my friends." "Cubs are not friends," said. "Cubs are the future of our pack. They should not be touching aliens. They should not be eating alien food. They should not be waiting at the dock like abandoned pets." The words were harsh. Saw Bora's ears go flat against her head in shame. She saw step back. She saw his tail stop moving. Something in his eyes changed. The warmth did not disappear, but something harder appeared beside it. "They are not pets," she said. Her voice was still soft, but there was no fear in it. "They are children who lost their mother. I am someone who brings them sweets and tells them stories. If that offends you, I am sorry, but I made a promise and I will keep it." Stared at her for a long moment. The dock was silent. Other watched, waiting to see if the old hunter would strike the small human down. But did not move. Something in the human's words had touched a wound he kept hidden. A wound shaped like his dead niece. A wound shaped like 3 orphaned cubs he did not know how to help. He turned and walked away without another word. Let out a slow breath. Then she looked down at the cubs and smiled again, as if nothing had happened. "Now," she said, "who wants to help me unload the cargo? I brought something special this time. Seeds from Earth. I am going to teach you how to grow tomatoes." The cubs followed her into the ship, their earlier shame forgotten. On the dock, the other returned to their work, speaking in low voices about the strange human woman. She was not a hunter. She was not a warrior. She was small and soft and breakable. But she always came back, and she always came back smiling. None of them understood why. Not yet. 18 months before the cubs waited at the dock, had floated in the darkness between stars, waiting to die. Her ship, the Persimmon, had been a gift from her grandmother. It was old when received it. It was ancient now. The engine had been making bad sounds for weeks but could not afford repairs. She had taken a risk, pushing through one more delivery run. The risk had not paid off. The engine died in the empty space near station. No explosion. No warning, just silence. One moment the ship was flying. The next moment it was drifting, a tiny metal box lost in the infinite black. Had sent distress signals. She had sent them again and again until her communication system ran out of power. No one answered. She saw ships pass by on her sensors, patrol vessels doing their rounds. They scanned her ship. They saw she was human. They kept flying. Humans were not important in this sector. Humans were small, weak, short-lived creatures. A human trader dying in space was not worth the fuel to save her. That was the way. By the 6th day had accepted her death. She had wrapped herself in every blanket she owned. She had turned off all systems except life support, and even that was failing. The air was getting thin. The cold was getting worse. She spent her time looking out the window at the stars, thinking about her grandmother, thinking about Earth, thinking about all the things she would never do. She was not angry, she was just tired. On the 6th night, a light appeared outside her window. At first thought she was dreaming, or dying. Maybe this was what death looked like, a bright light coming to take her away. But then she heard a sound against her hull, metal touching metal, a docking clamp. Someone was saving her. The airlock opened with a hiss. Cold air rushed in, but it was fresh air. Breathable air. Tried to stand, but her legs were too weak. She fell. Strong arms caught her. Looked up and saw a face looking down at her, but this face was not cold or cruel. The eyes were worried. The fur was reddish-brown, unusual for the species. There was female, younger than most patrol pilots. "Can you breathe?" they asked. Her voice was rough but not unkind. Tried to speak. Only a croak came out. "Do not talk," they said. "Save your strength. I am taking you to the station." She lifted like she weighed nothing. To us, she probably did weigh nothing. Humans were so small, so light, so fragile. Wanted to ask why. Why had this hunter saved her when all the others had ignored her? But she was too weak. Her eyes closed, she slept. When she woke up, she was in the station's medical bay. The doctors there also looked at her like she was a strange insect. They treated her wounds and her frostbite with professional skill but no warmth. They told her she would live. They did not sound happy about it. Asked about the pilot who saved her, the doctors exchanged looks. "Her name is," one of them said. "She broke formation to tow your ship. Her commanders are not pleased. She claimed salvage rights on your vessel, but everyone knows that is a lie. Your ship is worth nothing." Found later that day, the pilot was sitting alone in a corner of the station's common area, drinking something that smelled strong and bitter. Others walked past her without looking. She had been marked, an outsider among her own people for saving an outsider. Sat down across from her, looked up with surprise. "You should rest," said. "You almost died." "Why did you save me?" asked. Was quiet for a moment. She looked into her drink like it held answers. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "I have 3 cubs," she said, 2 daughters and a son. Their father died in a hunting accident 2 years ago. I am all they have." She looked up at. "When I saw your ship drifting, I thought about my children. I thought about how they would feel if I was the one dying alone in the dark. And I thought about how I would want someone, anyone, to help me." She shrugged, a very human gesture that looked strange on her wolf-like body. "So I helped you. It is not complicated." Felt tears in her eyes. She had not cried in years, but now she could not stop. Looked uncomfortable, as always did around human emotions. "Thank you," whispered. "I owe you my life." Made a dismissive sound. "You owe me nothing, just live well, make something of the time I gave you, that is enough." Ship was repaired with parts bought on credit. She left the station a week later, promising to return with payment. Waved goodbye from the dock, 3 small cubs standing beside her. They looked up at the human ship with curiosity. Did return. She brought payment and more. She brought gifts for toys for the cubs and seeds from earth that she thought might grow in the station's small garden. Laughed at the seeds, did not garden, but she kept them anyway. Came back again and again. Each time she spent a little more time with and her cubs. She learned their names: Bora, the serious eldest daughter, the quiet son, the wild youngest daughter. She taught them human games. She told them stories about oceans and forests and snow. For the first time in years, had something like a family. Then the war at the border happened. Was called to fight. She was still a patrol pilot, still had duties to her people, even if those people looked at her strangely now. She said goodbye to her cubs. She said goodbye to, she promised to come back. She did not come back. The message reached station on a cold morning. Ship had been destroyed in a border skirmish with raiders. No survivors, no body to recover, just fire and silence. Was not on the station when it happened. She was 3 star systems away, delivering cargo, thinking about what gifts to bring the cubs next time. When she heard the news, she turned her ship around immediately. She reached station 1 week after his death. She walked straight to the cubs' temporary housing, a cold, empty room where orphans waited to be assigned new families. The cubs were sitting together in a corner, not speaking, not playing. They looked lost. Sat down on the floor in front of them, looked up with red, swollen eyes. "The human," she whispered, "mother's friend." "Yes," said. Her own voice was thick with tears she was trying to hide. "I am here." "Mother is gone," Bora said flatly. The eldest cub was trying to be strong, but her hands were shaking. "I know," reached out and took Bora's shaking hands in her own. "I know, little wolf, and I am so sorry." "What will happen to us?" asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Looked at the 3 cubs, these children who had lost everything, who had no one, who were looking at her with desperate hope in their golden eyes. "I do not know," she said honestly, "but I know one thing. I owe your mother my life, and I am going to spend that life making sure you 3 are okay. I will come back every month, no matter what, I promise." crawled into his lap, and buried her face against her chest. "Do you promise?" she asked, her voice muffled. Held her tight. "I promise," she said. "I will always come back." Was late. This had happened before, of course. Space travel was not exact. Storms, mechanical problems, route changes, many things could delay a ship by a day or two. The Cubs knew this. They had learned to be patient. But it had been 2 weeks now. 14 days past the time had promised to arrive, and there was no message, no communication, nothing. Bora stood at the dock every morning before the station's artificial sunrise began. She told herself she was just checking the arrival schedules. She told herself she was practicing discipline, as a future hunter should. But every time a ship appeared on the sensors, her heart beat faster, and every time it was not the persimmon, something inside her cracked a little more. Had stopped talking. This was not unusual. He had always been the quiet one, but now his silence was heavy. He spent his days in the station's small library, reading the human books had brought them on her previous visits. He read them over and over, as if the words might summon her back. Was the worst. She had started sleeping in the jacket had given her, an old human military coat that was far too big for a cub. She dragged it everywhere, wrapped herself in it at night, and growled at anyone who suggested she wash it. The jacket still smelled like sweet food and engine oil and something warm that could not name. "She is coming," told everyone who asked. "She promised, she always comes back." The other on the station said nothing, but their eyes said everything. Humans were fragile. Humans died easily. Space was vast and cruel and did not care about promises. The Cubs would learn this lesson eventually. Better they learn it now while they were young. Watch from a distance, as he always did. He had never liked the human woman. She was soft where a hunter should be hard. She smiled too much. She made the Cubs weak with her kindness and her strange gifts. Every time she visited, the Cubs seemed less like and more like something else, something gentler, something that would not survive in a galaxy full of teeth. But he could not deny that she had kept her promise. For 18 months had returned to station without fail. Through storms, through trade disputes, through illness, she always arrived. She always brought gifts. She always spent time with the Cubs. She always left with tears in her eyes and a smile on her face. And now she was late, very late. Found himself checking the communication logs more often than he wanted to admit. He told himself it was because the Cubs were becoming a problem. Their mopping was affecting station morale. Their waiting at the dock was embarrassing. He needed the human to return so things could go back to normal. He did not admit, even to himself, that he was worried. The message came on the 15th day. It was weak, broken by static, barely readable. The station's communication officer almost deleted it as noise, but one word came through clearly: persimmon. Was in the control room when they cleaned up the signal. He was not supposed to be there, but no one dared tell the old hunter to leave. He stood in the shadows and listened. Engine compromised. Position is fractured belt. Life support holding. Will attempt repairs. The message repeated twice, then stopped. The fractured belt felt his blood go cold. The fractured belt was a region of space that even feared. It was a maze of broken asteroids, unstable gravity wells, and sensor-blocking dust clouds. Pirates used it as a hiding place. Ships that entered often did not leave. Navigation was nearly impossible. Rescue missions were suicide. "Log the signal," the station commander said. "File a report." "Should we send a rescue team?" the communication officer asked. The commander laughed. It was not a kind sound. Into the fractured belt, for a human cargo ship, the cost would be 50 times what that woman is worth. Log it and move on. Said nothing. He turned and walked out of the control room. He found Bora at the dock, as expected. The young female was staring at the stars through the station's transparent walls, her ears flat against her head. She did not turn when approached. You heard, Bora said. It was not a question. News travels fast on a station, replied. They are not going to save her. Again, not a question. No. Bora was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was shaking, but not with sadness, with anger. She saved us, Bora said. After Mother died, everyone looked at us like we were broken things to be thrown away. Nobody wanted 3 orphan cubs. Nobody except her. She is not even our species, and she cared more about us than our own people. She turned to look at. Her golden eyes were burning. And now she is dying alone in the dark, and nobody will help her, because she is human, because she is not worth the fuel. Remembered another time, another ship dying in the dark, another person nobody wanted to save. He remembered his niece breaking formation, ignoring orders, risking everything to save a stranger. Your mother was like that, said quietly. She cared too much, it made her weak. It made her good, Bora shot back, and is good too, better than anyone on the station. Should have scolded her. A cub should not speak to an elder that way. A cub should not value outsiders over her own people. A cub should know her place. But was tired of pretending, tired of the cold rules that had let his niece die dishonored, tired of a culture that called kindness weakness. Go to your siblings, he said. Stay in your quarters, do not cause trouble. Bora's eyes narrowed. Why? Turned and walked toward the docking bay where his old patrol ship waited, covered in dust and memories. Because I have something to do, he said, and I do not want you getting in the way. Bora understood. Her eyes went wide. You are going to save her, she whispered. Did not answer, he kept walking. Behind him, Bora ran to find her siblings. She had news to share. Hope, fragile and unlikely, had appeared in the silence between stars. The old hunter was going to bring their human home. The fractured belt lived up to its name. Flew his old patrol ship through a nightmare of broken rocks and spinning debris. Asteroids the size of mountains tumbled past his windows. Smaller rocks bounced off his hull with sounds like gunfire. His sensors were nearly useless. The dust and metal fragments in this region scattered every signal. He flew on instinct and memory. He had patrolled near this region decades ago, when he was young and stupid enough to think he was immortal. He had lost friends in these asteroid fields. He had sworn never to return. Yet here he was, chasing a distress signal, hunting for a human. The irony was not lost on him. Followed the coordinates from transmission, adjusting for drift in time. The math was rough. The margin of error was huge. He might search for days and find nothing but rocks and silence. But hunters did not give up. That was the one thing his culture got right. A hunter pursued their prey until the end, and right now was hunting for a little ship called the Persimmon. He found it on the second day. The ship was wedged between 2 asteroids, caught in their slow dance around each other. The hull was breached in 3 places. Emergency patches covered the holes, makeshift repairs done from the inside. Whoever was in there had fought hard to stay alive. Brought his ship alongside and extended the docking clamp. The connection was rough, the angle wrong, but it held. He grabbed his emergency kit and entered the airlock. The inside of the Persimmon was dark and cold. The only light came from a few emergency strips on the floor glowing faint red. The air was thin but breathable, barely. Frost covered every surface. Moved through the ship, his breath making clouds in front of his face. He passed the cargo bay, still full of sealed containers. He passed the tiny kitchen, where a cup of frozen liquid sat on the counter. He reached the cockpit. Was there. She had wrapped herself in every piece of fabric she could find, blankets, clothes, even curtains torn from the walls. She sat in the pilot's chair, curled into a ball, her face hidden. A small device sat in her lap, still recording. For a terrible moment, thought she was dead. Then she moved, just a little, just a shiver. crossed the cockpit in 2 strides and pulled the blankets away from her face. Her skin was pale, almost blue. Her lips were cracked. Her eyes were closed. But when he touched her cheek, she made a small sound. "Human," said. His voice was harsh, but his hands were gentle. "Wake up, I am here." His eyes opened slowly. They were unfocused, confused. She looked at like she did not understand what she was seeing. "Am I dead?" she whispered. Her voice was barely there. "Not yet," said. "Can you walk?" She tried to shake her head. It was too much effort. "Cold," she managed. "So cold." Did not waste more time on words. He lifted her from the chair, blankets and all, and carried her toward the airlock. She weighed nothing to him. Humans were so small, so fragile, so easy to break. And yet this one had refused to break. She had survived nearly 3 weeks in a dying ship, alone, with no hope of rescue. She had patched holes in her hull with her bare hands. She had rationed her air and water down to drops. She had fought death with nothing but stubbornness. Maybe there was something to admire in that. Carried her through the airlock and into his own ship. The warmth hit them immediately. Gasped and started shivering harder, a good sign. Her body was waking up. He placed her in the medical bay and started the heating system. He wrapped her in thermal blankets and started an IV of warm fluids. He had basic medical training, like all hunters. He did what he could. While the machines worked, went back to the persimmon. He wanted to know why. Why had this human been in the fractured belt? Why had she risked her life in one of the most dangerous regions of space? He found his answer in the cargo bay. The containers were labeled in script: medical supplies, vaccines, treatments for a disease called the wasting plague, a sickness that had struck a colony on the far side of the sector. The plague was not fatal, but it left victims weak and suffering for months. The colony had sent out requests for medicine. Most traders had refused. The route was too dangerous. The pay was too low. Opened one container and found hundreds of small bottles, each one worth a fortune to a sick family. He opened another and found surgical equipment. Another held nutrient supplements for recovering patients. The human had been bringing medicine to sick. She had risked her life and lost her ship to help a species that looked down on her as prey. Stood in the cold cargo bay for a long time, staring at the medicine, thinking about his niece and her impossible kindness, thinking about the cubs waiting at the dock, thinking about everything he had believed about strength and weakness. When he returned to his ship, was awake. She was still weak, still pale, but her eyes were clear. She looked at with confusion. "You," she said, "the angry one, you saved me." Sat down across from her. "It seems I did." "Why?" It was the same question she had asked all those years ago. The same question that had no easy answer. "The cubs," said finally. "They wait for you at the dock. They have been waiting for 2 weeks. It was becoming annoying." A small smile crossed cracked lips. "Annoying. Very annoying. I am sorry for the trouble." She closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling at her, but then she opened them again, worried. "The cubs, are they okay?" Bora was supposed to start hunter training, had a test in his studies. She was growing so fast, I wanted to see. "They are fine," interrupted. "They are worried about you, not themselves." Relaxed slightly. Then her eyes found the window, looking out at the asteroid field. "The medicine," she said, "for the colony. I did not finish the delivery." "I saw," paused. "That route goes through the fractured belt. You knew the danger." "Yes." "You went anyway." "People were sick." His voice was simple, like she was explaining something obvious. "I had medicine. The math was easy." Stared at her. This small, fragile creature who could not run fast or fight hard or survive without machines and supplies. This human who should have died 100 times over in this harsh galaxy. "You are either very brave or very stupid," he said. Smiled. It was a real smile now, warm despite her exhaustion. "My grandmother always said the same thing," she replied. "She could never decide which one either." made a sound that might have been a laugh. He had not laughed in years. "Rest now," he said, standing up. "The journey back to the station will take 4 days. You need to heal." His eyes were already closing, but she reached out and caught his arm with surprising strength. "Thank you," she whispered, "for coming, for not leaving me in the dark." Looked down at her small hand on his fur. He thought about his niece, who had done the same thing for this woman years ago. He thought about the cubs who had learned kindness from this stranger. He thought about what it meant to be a hunter. Maybe hunting was not just about killing. Maybe it was about protecting. Maybe it was about finding what was precious and bringing it home safe. "Sleep," he said gruffly. "The cubs are waiting." Smiled and let go of his arm. In seconds she was asleep. Returned to the pilot's seat and set course for station. Behind him, the fractured belt faded into the distance. He was bringing her home. The station's medical bay was not designed for humans. The bed was too long, the machines too big, the instruments made for hands with claws instead of soft fingers. Looked like a child sleeping in a giant's house. The regeneration sleeve on her arm hummed quietly, fixing the frostbite damage cell by cell. But she was not alone. Bora sat in a chair beside the bed, arms crossed, refusing to leave even when the doctors told her visiting hours were over. Sat at the foot of the bed, a human book open in his lap, reading quietly so would have something nice to hear if she woke up. Had somehow climbed onto the bed itself, curled against the side like a silver-furred cat, her 2 big human jackets spread over both of them. Stood in the doorway watching. The station commander had not been happy about the unauthorized rescue mission. There would be questions, maybe punishment. Did not care. Let them try to discipline him. He was old and tired and done following rules that left good people to die. On the 3rd day, woke up. Her eyes opened slowly, blinking in the bright medical lights. She was confused for a moment. The last thing she remembered was cold and darkness, and a gruff voice telling her to rest. But then she felt the warm weight against her side and looked down. Was there pressed close, her small face peaceful in sleep. Felt tears in her eyes. She reached out with her good hand and stroked the cub's silver fur, gentle as a whisper. The movement woke Bora, who had dozed off in her chair. The young female's eyes went wide. "You are awake," she shouted, too loud for a medical bay. "She is awake." The commotion woke the others. Suddenly was surrounded by 3 excited cubs, all talking at once, all reaching for her, all crying and laughing at the same time. "We thought you were dead. Said you were alive, but we did not believe him. Your ship is broken, but the engineers say they can fix it. Are you hungry? The food here is bad, but I saved you some sweets from your last visit." Laughed. It hurt. Her throat was still raw, her body still weak, but she laughed anyway. She pulled the cubs close, all 3 of them, and held them like she would never let go. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am so sorry I scared you." "You should be sorry," Bora said, trying to sound stern but failing completely. "You promised you would always come back. You almost broke your promise." "Almost," agreed, "but I did not. I am here." "You are here," repeated, burying her face against his shoulder. "You came back." "I always will," said, "I promised." From the doorway watched the reunion. Something in his chest felt strange, tight, uncomfortable. He had not felt this way in decades, not since was young, not since he had something soft left in his heart. He turned to leave, but his voice stopped him. He looked back. The human was watching him with those strange flat eyes, so different from eyes, yet somehow just as sharp. "Thank you," she said simply, "for saving me, for bringing me back to them." Wanted to say something harsh, something about duty or annoying cubs or how she should be more careful in the future, but the words would not come. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small object. He walked to his bedside and placed it on the table next to her. It was a hunter's token, carved from bone, worn smooth by years of handling, Among such tokens were sacred. They were given to those who had earned respect, not through blood or battle, but through something deeper. Looked at the token, then up at. She did not understand completely, but she understood enough. My niece chose well, said quietly. When she saved you all those years ago, she saw something worth saving. I did not understand then. I think I understand now. He turned and walked away before could respond. He was not good at emotional moments. He was a hunter, not a poet. But as he left, he heard's voice behind him. See, I told you he was nice. He just hides it behind his grumpy face. Almost smiled. 3 weeks later, was ready to leave. The persimmon had been repaired by station engineers. They had refused any payment, something that had never happened before in the history of the station. When tried to argue, the lead engineer, a massive with hands, had simply shaken his head. You bring medicine to our people, he said. You care for our cubs. This is the least we can do. Word had spread through the station about what had done, about the medicine she had been carrying to the sick colony, about her weeks alone in the fractured belt, about how she had refused to give up even when death was certain. Respected strength. They always had, but they were learning that strength came in different forms. Sometimes it looked like a small human woman with a battered ship and a heart too big for her body. On the day of departure, a crowd gathered at the dock. This was unusual. Normally, only cargo workers and officials came to see ships leave. But today, dozens have stood along the observation windows. Hunters, traders, engineers, doctors, all watching as the human walked toward her ship. Moved slowly. She was still healing, still tired, but she walked with her head high and a smile on her face. The cubs walked beside her, as always. Same time next month, Bora asked, trying to sound casual. Same time next month, confirmed. Will you bring more seeds? Asked. The tomatoes are almost ready. I want to try growing something new. I will bring you peppers, said, and maybe some herbs. We will make a proper garden. Will you bring more sweets? Asked. She had finally allowed her human jacket to be washed, but she still wore it everywhere. Laughed always. She reached the ramp of her ship and turned to look at the cubs one last time. Behind them, she could see the crowd watching. She could see standing apart from the others, arms crossed, face unreadable. She raised her hand and waved, a human gesture that they had never quite understood but had grown used to. A few of them waved back. Thank you, said, loud enough for everyone to hear, for everything. Then she turned and walked up the ramp into her ship. The hatch closed behind her. Engines hummed to life. The persimmon lifted from the dock, rising through the station's protective shields and out into the star-filled darkness. The cubs remained at the observation window, watching until the ship was just a tiny light among millions. She will come back, said with complete certainty. Of course she will, Bora replied. She promised, added. Approached them, standing behind the 3 cubs as they watched the stars. He said nothing. There was nothing to say. But he stayed with them until the light of the persimmon disappeared completely, carrying its strange pilot toward distant worlds and new adventures. Carrying a human woman who had no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons of any kind. A woman who kept coming back to a station full of wolves, because she had made a promise to 3 orphaned cubs. A woman who always came back smiling. In the silent black between stars, the persimmon flew on, and in the pilot's seat touched the bone token hanging from a cord around her neck. She had a delivery to make, a garden to plan, stories to tell, and 3 young wolves waiting for her at the dock. She smiled. She would be back. She always came back.